What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nolan TCG, and we are back here today for another deck profile, and this time, it's for Despia. So it's Despia Shadows, to be specific. We do have the new support that came out of Burst of Destiny, so we have looked at chucking that into the list. Overall, the deck still lacks that, big kind of push. I don't really know where to find it. If you do have any recommendations at the end of the profile, do make sure to comment them down below. But ultimately, I guess it's probably just the fact that Flundereese runs around a bit at the moment, and that kind of doesn't really care about this deck, and it just runs through it. It is pretty decent at shutting down other stuff though, so that is something to always consider. Just your matchups are going to be really key when you're playing a deck like this. But as always, before we do get started, please do remember to drop down below and hit that subscribe button if you are new here, because we are always happy to have new people to the channel. And let's get on into the deck profile. Before we do get started on this one though, it is brought to you of course by yourplaymat.com, who got us our beautiful Nolan TCG extra deck sleeves. These are available on yourplaymat.com, as well as you can get custom sleeves and custom playmats, so whatever you need for the current format. There is an affiliate link in the description down below that does get you a little bit of a discount on your order. Also, enter the code Nolan10YP for 10% off your order. Also kicks back a little bit to the channel, so everything will be very much appreciated. If you're shopping there, you're getting custom sleeves, custom playmats down. Make sure to enter our code at checkout. But let's get on into this deck profile. Okay, so starting us off for the deck profile, we do have Mr. Consistency himself. That is our 3 copies of Aluba, the Jester of Despia. I'm just going to basically be searching all of your branded Spell and Trap cards. I just went to say Despia as well. But yeah, it searches your branded Spell and Trap cards. Remember that. Card is Konami's, yeah, good job. Then after that, we have our Dramaturge of Despia. We are playing 2 of it. Is cuttable to 1 if you do want to go that way. I just like to have the board presence whenever I need it. And there will be from time to time where you banish your Dramaturge, and you do want to have the second one accessible. So yeah, we are playing the 2 copies of Dramaturge in the list. Is also like a cute little negation that you can have floating around. And then lastly, for our Despia monsters, 1 copy of Despian Tragedy. Again, this card is fully cuttable. I just like what it offers from time to time. I am not playing something like a Foolish Burial in this list, so that is another reason why you could cut the Despian Tragedy. However, you can send it off stuff like Shaddoll Fusion and things like that to trigger off the effect from deck, of course. And then after that, we go into our Shaddoll line. So we are playing 2 copies of Shaddoll Squamata, simply because it accesses your entire Shaddoll line, pretty much. We're just going to be sending it, getting something else, stacking our grave full of resources so that we can trigger off stuff like our Schism later on. 2 copies of Wendy. You can consider this at 1. You can consider it at 3. It's completely up to you. It does provide you board presence. The reason why I ended up going to 2 is because I found in my previous list there were times where I'd run out of Shaddoll names in the deck on about turn 5 or 6. And given that you can get into some very grindy states in this deck, you don't really want to do that. So I did up my count of Wendy to 2. That is kind of a double-edged sword because Wendy will be summoning from the deck. So it can also still thin out the deck, which causes an issue. But it does get you into stuff like your App Cologne, and you don't have to stress so much about burning through all of your names. Then we go to our one-off Shaddolls. So we are playing 1 Dragon, just to clear out back row. 1 copy of Hedgehog to add a little bit of consistency to the deck, same as with the 1 copy of Beast. Got a little bit of a crom there, get rid of that. And then lastly, this time in the list, we have switched it up to a Nashadol Aerial. Essentially just because of the ability we can crow out and really push ourselves forward in that grind deck with a lot of in the grind game with a lot of decks that use that grave a bit more grave centric, I guess. Our hand trap of choice in this list is 3 copies of Effect Veiler. We do want to have light targets in the deck for our Shaddoll Fusion, which is the reason why we're playing the 3 copies of Effect Veiler. It is also a pretty good hand trap at the moment, being able to stop stuff like Flundereese and stop things like Sword Soul. The targeted negation, very good in decks against decks that chain block. And then lastly, for our monsters, we are playing the Nadir Servant package still. So we've got the 1 copy of Ecclesia and 1 copy of Fleur de Lis. We are not playing Punishment in this list because it locks you out of Fusion Summoning on the next turn. And that's not something you are keen on. Then we get into our spells. Generally, just consistency to start us off. 3 copies of Branded Opening, being able to pretty much search for everything. Discards as well, so it fills up your graveyard. Always kind of good. Then for our fusions, we can now cut down to the 1 copy of Despia Theatre of the Branded, because we do now have access to the 1 copy of Branded in Red. Card was super important for the deck, being able to slim down on how many tragedies you had, theatres you had to play. Because theatre, despite the fact that it is good, it doesn't offer you a lot outside of your fusion summon. It does give you the other effects, of course. Like, don't take those for granted, because there will be times where that comes up huge. But the fact that just it getting outed by a Cosmic, your opponent will know to out this card once they realize this is your one way to fusion summon. So we do have the 1 copy of Branded in red now. We can set it. It's quick play, use it on the opponent's turn. That is always cute. It also gives you consistency in the fact that you don't necessarily have to have everything that you're using, because you can add back from your grave and then banish out what you just added back for the fusion summon. Then we get into our Shaddoll fusion spells and traps after that. 3 copies of Shaddoll fusion start us off. When we're going second, we do want to be resolving this, so you do want to play this at 3. This is probably the best card in the deck. Maybe a bit controversial to say that, but any Shaddoll list, 3 cards, absolutely optimal. That shouldn't need to be said. Then after that, we are just on 2 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion. When I originally did this list, I said I would definitely be cutting the 3rd Shaddoll Fusion for the Branded in red. That's essentially what we've done. You don't need 3 copies of El Shaddoll Fusion in this deck. You don't necessarily always have the abundance of Shaddoll names, like I mentioned earlier, to be able to constantly be resolving El Shaddoll Fusion. So that, yeah, because you're going to be banishing out quite a lot with your schisms and everything else. So it's not necessarily something you need to be running at 3. Then our draw spell of choice, we are playing 3 copies of the Pot of Prosperity now. Again, your extra deck, you have multiples of the cards that are super necessary, so you can afford to banish them out with the Prosperity. I'd only recommend banishing 3 though. Banishing 6 could be a little bit risky on your part. Because we do, of course, have the Nadir Servant. We do want to keep targets in our extra deck for the Nadir so we can get through to our Ecclesia. Then lastly, we've still got a couple of spells left. We do have 3 copies of Super Poly that come up next. Just going to essentially be breaking boards. That's what it's here for. Along with the 1 copy of Call by the Grave to stop any hand traps that might come our way. And then lastly, it's the 40th card. It is a trap. You know what it is. It's 1 copy of Shaddoll Schism. Okay, now we get into our extra deck, and of course it is very fusion heavy. However, it does start off with a new one. 1 copy of Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. So effectively it's going to soft lock your opponent, inflicting the burn damage every time they go around. And of course it is the free, I guess, summon back when your opponent controls anything from the extra deck, plus rituals. Definitely something to consider. Yeah, you bring it back, it gets banished when it leaves the field, but it does continually put that pressure on the opponent of taking that 600 chip damage every time. Can steal games, also can, yeah, soft lock your opponent. If you do big damage, you drop it on board, they can't activate anything, which is going to be very fun for them. But do remember, it does say Fusion Summon card, so yeah, I'm not sure how the interaction works with that from the graveyard, haven't questioned it yet. Then after that, we have 2 copies of Despian Quotus, still the standard one. However, we have cut the Big Boy, so Big Boy has been cut for the 1 copy of Masquerade. Despian Quotus, again, you're just going to be cheesing your opponent, making sure they can't attack you, and then just, yeah, overall, having a great time with the fact that it can add that consistency to your deck as well. Then we go into our Shaddoll lines, so we have the 2 copies of Construct. We are just 2/2/2 for everything here. So 2 Construct, 2 Winder, and 2 App Cologne. All very, very good cards. You are playing Shaddolls, of course. That's why you're accessing the stuff from your extra deck. We have Winder to lock out your opponent. We have the Construct to be able to send everything to the graveyard. You can use it to get like 3 pops and stuff like that, or you can use it to add, I guess, consistency to your list. And then the App Cologne, you get that negation, which is always pretty cute. Then we go into the rest of our extra deck. So we do have some more fusion still. So we've got the 1 copy of Titaniclad. Again, you're not going to be fusion summoning this guy. Titaniclad is simply here to be sending off your Nadir Servant so that you can get access to the Fleur-de-Lis at the end. Then we have the 1 copy of Entis. You can send it off your Nadir Servant to get that free pop if you'd like. And then we have our Super Poly targets after this. It is 1 copy of Starving Venom Fusion Dragon and 1 copy of Guilty Gearfried the Magical Steel Knight. This can simply be anything that you need to, I guess, how do you put it? This can be anything that you need to break boards with the Super Poly. It's simply in here for Phantom Knights because it is a rather cute thing that you can do. When they're mid-combo, you just drop the Super Poly and then they look at you like, oh, I don't have a way to play anymore. And then lastly, we go into the rest of our extra deck. It is the Link. So we've got 1 copy of Verte Anaconda, of course, send the fusions and summon. And 1 copy of Gravity Controller for turning our Shaddoll monsters into a Link, getting them to the graveyard, and adding cards back to our hand. That does wrap us up here for the deck profile for this one though. So as always, if you do have any recommendations or things you would change, do make sure to comment them down below. And as always, I've been Ben from Nolan TCG, and have a good afternoon, everybody.